Hi, welcome to episode 3 of FBU Huddle. We are excited to have you guys back this week. If you missed episode 1 and 2, please visit our YouTube page to check out Eric Richards and Rusty Manziel as they gave us the good on recruiting and college athletics. But tonight, we are extremely excited to be joined by Chris Miller, the former first-round pick and Pro Bowl quarterback. Really thrilled to have Chris here. But before we get going with Chris, I wanted to let everybody know that's tuned in that we want to hear from you tonight. Leave questions in the comments. Let us know where you're from. Let us know if you're an FBU camp alumni, what camp you've been to. And if you don't know much about FBU, please visit footballuniversity.org and get started with us, create a profile. But with that being said, let's get on to our guests here. Chris, how are you this evening? Thanks for joining.
I'm doing awesome. Thank you guys for having me. And Joe, if you could put that football card back up with my long mullet and the black flowing from 1987 or 88 or 89. Oh my gosh. Color difference there. Wow.
That's a good flow right there.
Oh, back in the day, the mullet was big. I didn't have to use any hair color back then either. Wow, that's crazy.
I mean, that's strong right there. I have not had the issue with a mullet.
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me, Matt.
Yeah, no problem, Chris. So as we get kind of started here, give everybody a little bit of a background on your whole football career, how you got started with football all the way from high school to the pros.
Okay. Well, I think if there's any young listeners out there, I think I didn't start playing football till 6th grade. So a little bit different thinking than today's Texas or Georgia football, where they start them when they're maybe 5 or 6 or so. But I went to high school in Eugene, Oregon at Sheldon High School, where Justin Herbert went, who's going to get drafted probably in the top 5, maybe tomorrow in the NFL draft tomorrow night. And then I got recruited by several colleges, Pac-10 colleges back then, and decided to stay home and attended the University of Oregon and started there for 3 years, was a first-team All-Pac-10 quarterback for a couple of years, 1985, 1986, and then was a first-round draft pick with the Atlanta Falcons back in 1987. And that's when one of the strikes happened back in 1987. So didn't end up signing with the Falcons till Halloween that year. And when I signed, we were 2-7. And I was like, oh, wow, this isn't necessarily where you want to start your NFL career. But so I'm excited for the draft tomorrow to see how that thing shapes out, especially kind of under the circumstances we're working under now from home. And then played 10 years in the National Football League, 7 for the Atlanta Falcons, had a couple ACL injuries on that Georgia Dome turf, and then went to play for my team I was a big fan of growing up, the Los Angeles Rams, on grass in LA. And then we got moved to St. Louis back on AstroTurf. And then I started hitting my head on the turf and suffered some concussions there, took 3 years off and went back and played with the Denver Broncos in 1999 after they won back-to-back Super Bowls. My good friend John Elway retired. So then I got into high school coaching, and I just finished up this last year, I think my 11th year as a high school head coach. I've coached 16 years in high school. Coached 4 years quarterbacks with the Arizona Cardinals, 3 full seasons in a training camp in 2008 when they went to the Super Bowl. I was a little part of that staff just during training camp. Worked with Bill Musgrave, my good friend, in the Denver Broncos training camp in 2018. And I was an offensive coordinator for the XFL Roughnecks with my good friend June Jones with the Houston Roughnecks, and we were 5-0 and leading the league. The next best records in our league were 3-2, and so we thought we had a good chance to chase a championship. And then the plug got pulled, and all the games got canceled. And here we sit talking tonight. Actually, the championship game was scheduled for April 26th, so it would have been this next weekend. But here we are, and I'm grateful to be talking some FBU quarterback play, and look forward to it.
Well, we're excited to have you on. I mean, obviously we wish it was under different circumstances. It looks like you guys were having a great season down there in Houston. Tell us a little bit about the experience with the XFL. I know that it was cut short, but we'd love to hear about the experience. What were some of the positives for some of the athletes, especially down in Houston?
Yeah, I think it was a great deal. It's needed. There's a developmental need for the NFL, and I think we that purpose. There are a lot of good football players out there that don't have a place to play or didn't end up in Canada or whatever the case may be. So, we had a lot of talented young men. Our quarterback, PJ Walker, who played at Temple, and then he was with the Indianapolis Colts for about a year and a half, I think, on their practice squad. He was our quarterback and really developed from when we first got him in December, and then we had training camp in January. And next thing you know, he was probably going to be the MVP of the league. He was playing very well. We led the league in scoring and passing yards and touchdown passes, and he signed a 2-year contract with his college coach, Matt Rule, with the Carolina Panthers for $1.6 million for 2 years. So, and I think we had 5 of our players off of our roster that signed NFL contracts with NFL clubs, obviously. So that's a nice percentage out of our 53-man roster. So it was a great experience. These guys were humble. They were very eager to continue to play football. They made a good wage until, the plug got pulled, but we all got paid pretty much fully for our year that we were involved. And it was June Jones, our head coach, ran a great program. It was kind of cool for me because I got to reacquaint myself with the run and shoot offense. I played in the run and shoot up until 1993 before I signed with the Rams as a free agent. And then June has since met with Bill Walsh for 7 or 8 years when June Jones coached over at Hawaii. And then there's a lot of one-back concepts. So our run and shoot really was some West Coast concepts, some one-back stuff like Don Air Coryell back in the day with the San Diego Chargers and Dan Fouts, and a similar scheme that Eli Manning won a couple of his Super Bowls with. And then, of course, we ran our base run and shoot stuff. So I learned a bunch of good football working for June. We kind of collaborated on the offense and the game plans, and it was a great experience. It was short-lived, the 5 weeks, but we had the preparation with the December, getting our playbooks ready and all those things, and training in January. And we were having a good time. 5-0, and there were 5 more league games and hopefully a couple playoff games, but made a lot of good relationships, and the weekends were fun. It ended too shortly, but I certainly took a lot of great takeaways and some friendships that'll last forever from that experience. So it was well worth it.
It's always fun when you're winning. When you're 5-0, it's easy to have a good time then. And I think that you said something at the beginning there about development, and I think that stretches across all levels of football, from middle school to high school to the pros, that there is a need for whether it's a developmental league for the NFL or just a developmental system, but development's always at the core. But look, it's an exciting night. We are literally less than 24 hours away from the 2020 NFL draft.
Yeah,
obviously, cool. You got some experience with that, being a former first round back in the 80s. Tell us a little bit about what some of these guys, what they're feeling right now at home, about to get drafted. Their lives are about to change. What's going through their minds?
Well, I think there's a tremendous amount of excitement, a lot of curiosity, probably some nerves, wanting to kind of have an idea where they're going, where they may end up. I kind of had an idea about 4 or 5 teams that were interested in me: the San Diego Chargers, the Oakland Raiders, Seattle Seahawks, and the Atlanta Falcons. And so kind of had an idea where I might go in the draft, from 5 to maybe 20 somewhere, and I ended up being the 13th pick. So ironically, back in the day when the draft took place, it took place at 8:30 in the morning East Coast. So we had a little tailgate party in the east end zone of Autzen Stadium here on Pacific Coast time.
Nice.
Had everybody show up there about 5 a.m. in the morning, man. So we had coffee and fruit and food, and everybody's like, oh, man, this is an early start. So I think I probably got up about 4 a.m., ended up getting drafted 13th pick. And then I had to fly out to Atlanta with a 3-hour time difference, take the red eye, and do a press conference that next morning. So I looked like heck warmed over, when I had got there. But it's going to be a different deal. The draft has been in New York. It was in Tennessee last year, in Nashville. This year was going to be in Las Vegas. And it's going to be really quite different, with only one head coach or owner or general manager can be in their house at one time. So Jerry and Stephen Jones, who are related, can't even be in the same house for the draft. So it'll be interesting to see how that flows. I kind of watched the WNBA draft and kind of saw how that worked with the one lady, the president of the WNBA, running that. So I assume, that'll happen with Roger Goodell out there in New York or wherever he's working from. But I know the players have to be super stoked and amped. It's been a lot different for them. I think it was a lot easier this year because they didn't have to go maybe Justin Herbert didn't have to go to 8 or 10 or 12 different clubs and go on different flights and workouts for him and be grilled on the whiteboard and do all those things because of the pandemic. So, most of his stuff has probably been like we're doing online. So, but it's a pretty cool night for him. And tomorrow at 5:00, it'll be awesome to see how the first round shakes out.
Definitely a different feel, both leading up to and then obviously tomorrow night. It's going to be much different than it's been in a long time. So, but the emotions, I think you're right. They don't change. There's still excitement in these athletes in their gut, and they're ready to get going. What is
it's a game change. It's a life change. Yeah. I mean, from college guys who are getting $900 or $1,000 a month or whatever it is to some of these first round guys are going to get what $20-30 million guaranteed, and Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert and some of these guys. So you talk about how things change quickly, with what we're dealing with now as a country, but for these football players as well.
And you can see right here, our producer in the back, Joe Buffard, putting up a great graphic just in terms of some of the alumni they're going to be kind of added to the stable over the next 3 days from the FBU.
Awesome.
And we'll certainly talk a little bit more about that left-handed gunslinger from Alabama here in a little bit. But as you kind of look at some of these guys that not even just, of course, FBU alum, but any of the other athletes, who are making that transition from student athlete to athlete now, they are now a professional athlete. What is some advice that you would give, that I think would resonate across the board in terms of being a young player, a college senior entering the pros, or maybe it's a middle schooler entering into high schooler, or a high school senior entering into college? As you transition to that next level, what's a good piece of advice that you can pass on?
I tell you, one of the coolest things for me is to see the FBU alumni who are getting drafted now, because I've been with FBU since its inaugural year in 2007. So this is about my 13th year working with FBU as a quarterback coach, and to watch it evolve and grow over time. But I'll start with the upper echelon level, college going to the NFL. I'd say the biggest thing, back when I got drafted, there were maybe only a handful of clubs that were really, really well run and well organized. The San Francisco 49ers were one of them back in the day. And nowadays you compare the New England Patriots maybe as the top dog. But when I came out in the draft, we were the youngest team in the NFL our first 3 years. And the Atlanta Falcons only had 3 winning seasons in 23 years. So when I got there, they didn't even have a general manager. And the Smith family, the 5 Smiths, kind of ran the organization. So I think nowadays you look across the board and the organizations are run so much better from top to bottom. And obviously TV contracts let them operate at a higher level, and the salary cap in terms of how much money they can spend on free agents. So it kind of holds the league on a more even keel, I guess. So, but I think the young guys who are going to get drafted, you go from taking college classes during the day. You may have your practice early in the mornings, or you may have to be done with your classes by noon or 1. Then you go to your football meetings, and then you go to football practice. There's no more of that. I mean, once you get into now the OTAs, the off-season training activities, and all the new rules with the National Football League, they can't work you as much as they used to do throughout the spring. Those are limited. But, you're getting paid as a professional now. You have to mature and grow up quickly. With groups like FBU and all the private training that goes on nowadays, I know college athletes are much more prepared to go to the National Football League and be mature enough and be ready through these Elite 11 programs and FBU programs and all the privatized training there is nowadays. When these guys come out, they come out a lot more ready-made than maybe back in the day. So, it becomes a business. It's a big business, but at the same time, you got to make it fun. Russ Grimm, a good friend of mine who is our line coach with the Arizona Cardinals, 11-year NFL Hall of Famer, he always said when we got together, hey, fellas, whether we're grinding, winning, losing, whatever, we got to make sure we have fun doing this. So these guys still are going to take that, Patrick Mahomes type attitude, Lamar Jackson type attitude to games and enjoy it, enjoy the life. And when they're under the biggest scope on Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football, and it's a lot of work, but you're getting paid for it and you're doing something that you really love and you're passionate about. I think going from high school to college, I think the biggest jump is just, you're away from mom and dad now and you have to go manage your class schedule. You have to manage getting yourself to class, being accountable with that. You have to manage getting yourself to your afternoon football meetings with your position coaches and such, and then you have to go practice. Then you watch the film practice afterwards, and you go home and you got to study. So and you don't have mom or dad there telling you to get it done or doing your laundry for you or cooking you a home cooked meal. So I think it's a big change in terms of just that maturity level of taking that big step. And then the youth kids, I think youth, there's so much good youth football out there now, competitive youth football. I know I've seen some young guys getting trained all over Twitter and through FBU. And so I think a lot of kids, when they go from that 8th grade year into high school, they're a lot more mature and prepared. And you see a lot of younger freshmen and sophomore kids making that step to play varsity football when they get there. So it's a fun progression to watch, but it'll be really cool to watch the FBU alum and the college guys going into the National Football League tomorrow night. And it's fun probably for the young middle school and high school age kids to watch that take place as well.
Yeah, we're certainly excited to see some of our alumni make the leap from college to the pros. We're fortunate and thrilled to have such a strong class that have come through the FBU platform and have used our regional camps to get better. Here's a Mr. Blankenship from Georgia, one of the best kickers in the country. Guys like Benjamin, the Arizona State running back, came through and did fantastic at the National Combine down at San Antonio as well. So the list is long with some of these alumni. Patrick Queen, a defensive back from LSU. So we're excited. Oh, Cam Akers, that's an old school shot right there, Chris. Cam Akers at FBU Top Gun. Looking good. So Chris, as we kind of move through, let's talk about your position heading into tomorrow night. Is there anybody that you particularly like from a quarterback perspective, and try not to be too biased with your boy Justin out in Oregon?
Yeah, I've got a really cool tie to the Herbert family. Justin Herbert. I saw him roll lefts, flip his hips around 4th grade and throw one about 35, 40 yards down the field back in grade school, and said, oh my goodness, this kid's special. He's got a chance to be something else. And then we actually went to the same high school, Sheldon High School in Eugene, Oregon, and then the University of Oregon. And his dad, ironically, was my all-state high school wide receiver. So it's pretty cool to see Justin get to the position now where he led Oregon to a Rose Bowl championship last year, and now he's got a chance to be a top 10 draft pick. But obviously, Joe Burrow, man, was extremely impressed with what he did this last season, record-setting season. His poise, his ability to move in the pocket and make plays, and his downfield accuracy, was very impressive. So I think he'll do a good job with Cincinnati and take over for my guy, Andy Dalton, who led them to 5 straight years while Andy was there, the Red Rocket. I think the kid from Utah State, is it Sean Love or
Jordan Love?
Jordan Love, yeah. Jordan Love looks like a developable guy. I enjoyed him. He had a terrific junior year, very prolific and productive. And then I think he graduated some seniors and lost some linemen and wasn't as productive, or his numbers weren't as good as they were the year prior, but a very talented guy. May go later, middle of the first round to later in the first round. Maybe a team like the New England Patriots or somebody may have an interest in him to kind of bring him in and develop like we were talking about. And then you got Tua. How do you say his last name?
Tua.
Yeah. How do you say it? I always butcher it. Tua. I don't even want to try it. Tua.
I always butcher it as well, so I just call him Tua.
Tua Tagovailoa, or whatever it is. Yeah. So you got Tua there, who I love. We're going to watch his film here in a little bit, his cut-ups. But he is a guy who has a tremendous upside. I think the concern is with what we're dealing with the COVID-19. All the NFL clubs are their doctors, their team doctors. They weren't able to get in and examine him personally and individually. And when you're investing that type of money and spending that type of money, that amount of dollars on a high round draft pick like that, boy, you really want to have your I's dotted and T's crossed. So it'll be interesting to see how high he goes. I know some of the experts are saying Justin Herbert may get taken before him because he's been healthy for the most part, or Tua may go higher, but I think you can't lose with either guy. And all 4 of those guys, I think, in the first round, it'll be fun to watch them go and see where they fall. And I saw the top 10 list of quarterbacks today, but I don't have all the guys memorized. But it looks like there's some good depth in there for the later rounds also, rounds 2 and 3 on Friday and through the weekend.
It's a deep draft for quarterbacks, certainly, and
wide receivers, monster draft for wide
receiver. It's extremely deep. It's going to be a really strong 3 days. I think it's one of the deeper drafts we've had in a long time. And speaking of wide receivers, we got Eric Richards chiming in. He wants to know who's the best wide receiver that he ever played with.
What's up, Big E? How you doing, man? I tell you, there's probably a couple of them I'll name. One was Andre Rison in Atlanta. We played in the '92 Pro Bowl together, and Andre was one of those guys that when the lights came on, he was phenomenal. He was probably in the hip pocket of Jerry Rice in terms of maybe the top 2 wide receivers at that time. I think Andre was a little bit like Lawrence Taylor, maybe, where he enjoyed a little bit of the extracurriculars, maybe a little bit more than Jerry Rice was doing at the time. And I think Jerry was probably with a better organization, more structured organization that was player-led and run, where Jerry, just was focused on football and winning and being successful. And Atlanta was such a fun town. Some of us had a little extra curricular fun there together, and Andre and I hung some together. I also had Michael Haynes with the Atlanta Falcons, who was probably the best deep threat in the National Football League at the time for our 2 or 3 years together. And he was the second fastest man in the NFL behind Darrell Green. So I hit him on a lot of go routes and skinny posts. And so those 2 guys were phenomenal in Atlanta. I got to play with Jerry Rice in the Pro Bowl in '92 and threw him the game-winning touchdown pass. So that was pretty awesome experience. Other than that, I watched Jerry kind of shred us, when we were playing against the 49ers. And I got to St. Louis. I played with Isaac Bruce his first 2 years, a Hall of Famer. And I could tell there was something that was going to be very special about Isaac. And I think in year 2 with Isaac, we threw for I think he had about 1,400 and some total yards, 23 touchdowns, and was really prolific in year 2. And you could tell he was going to be special, and recently named to the Hall of Fame. So those 3 guys were probably the top 3 guys I had in my career.
That's a pretty long list of top guys right there. I mean, that's
I got to play with I got to play with Shannon Sharp in Denver, and Rod Smith and Ed McCaffrey, and those guys were pretty darn good too. So I was blessed.
Not a lot of people can say they've thrown a touchdown to Jerry Rice, so it's probably nice to be on that list, right?
Yeah, that was sweet. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So as we kind of get back into your position a little bit, I want to kind of dig into some of the specifics that you would maybe relay to our different level of student athlete from a technique and on-field perspective. Maybe some things that you would have, if we were able to have had some of our camps earlier in the year that you would teach at an FBU regional camp. So if I'm a middle school student athlete quarterback and I'm going through my season, what's 1 or 2 things that you would tell me that I should really spend time focusing on when I'm away from camp or by myself?
I think for middle school athletes, it would be focusing on building your game from the ground up. I think the footwork needs to become really good, consistent. Some middle school kids aren't quite developed maybe as well as others, or kids who are maybe freshmen or sophomores in high school. So a lot of them I see when they throw the football, it tends to be an arm throw. They're throwing a lot with their arm and kind of straining and such. So I think it's important to really do a good job with your footwork, to get your bigger muscles involved, like your right hip and your right shoulder if you're a right-handed quarterback. And those things help you drive the football and create that effortless power that we're looking for. So I would say, the footwork's important. I believe every great rep starts with a great first step. Mm-hmm. So when you watch NFL quarterbacks, all the great ones have a great first step on their drop, whether they're playing from under center or in the shotgun. And then using those bigger muscles to drive that football, creating that effortless power. And then I'd say for the young guys, just become students of the game, especially with all this downtime and free time we have. Make sure you're watching film, go to YouTube and look at some NFL film, look at your favorite college quarterbacks, and, pick out 2 or 3 or 4 things that you like, that you kind of want to emulate, and become a fan and kind of a self-instructing coach right now if you can.
I think that's great advice. It almost seems so simple, work on your lower body strength, your feet, and making sure that you got sound footwork and study the game mentally. But it's much harder to do than it is to say. So great advice. Hopefully you middle school quarterbacks out there that are viewing in take that to heart and start to apply that to your day-to-day, especially right now when you've got some downtime. How about at the high school level, Chris? What would maybe be the 1 to 2 things to focus on as you transition into the high school level and you're looking to maybe play college football?
I'm training about 5 quarterbacks right now. So, the main thing is the high school quarterbacks, the main things I'm working on with them are kind of the same list that I just gave you for the youth guys. Really, for me, it's more of a checklist when I get them if I haven't worked with them before. Number one, I'm kind of doing an evaluation of their grip, their release. Do they have a nice release? Are they coming out of the gun barrel? Do they have a nice high C release, kind of like Peyton Manning talks about? Are they like Tom Brady, where they're really extending that arm and snapping that ball off that index finger? And so really when I'm coaching my guys, I'm using NFL cut-up film. I got some still pictures on my cell phone that I'm able to show them and share with them. And that kind of resonates with them when they watch the best in the world. I got Drew Brees on tape and Aaron Rodgers and Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and some of those guys. So it's some good clips for them. But really the main thing for them, and it sounds a little bit redundant, but I think those the best golfers in the world, the best football players or quarterbacks in the world, man, they build through repetition. During the offseason, they're working on repetition. Tom Brady's going to be 43 years old, and he is still doing the same drills he did probably when he started working with Tom Martinez, his quarterback trainer, when he was 12 years old. So, you got to build that foundation. You got to have a good base. Your footwork needs to be good. You have to use your core, your right hip, right shoulder, if you're a righty, to drive that football. So we're getting that ball jumping out of your hand and getting the needed velocity we want on it. And if you're lacking in those areas, that's what you come to me for. I can help make you better in those areas. Or if you're working with quarterback coach, I think Drew Brees is a great guy to watch. If you go watch some cut-up film of Drew Brees on YouTube, he's just under 6 foot. He has been the most accurate quarterback in NFL history, I think, 4 years of his career. This year, I think he was up around 74% or something like that, which is unheard of. But he becomes that accurate because he practices it. He's always working on it. So those would be the main things I would say for high school QB.
So it's funny to me, and I think that we stress this a lot at our camps, and a lot of the great quarterback trainers stress that it's really transferable from middle school to high school in terms of what you need to focus on. Just because you get to a certain level doesn't mean that you can stop working on a specific trait or skill. And looking at somebody like Tom Brady, who's starts at 12 years old and is probably doing the same drills as a 43-year-old. So I think that's a great piece of advice to continue to hammer down on repetition and never to stop working on a specific skill, regardless of what level you're at. Chris, I want to get into some of the film. I would really, really enjoy tonight for everybody that's viewing into FBU Huddle. We're actually going to bring up the film from the high school level and the pro day of Mr. Tua. And Tua was an FBU alum. He came to one of our regional camps back in the day. And we thought it would be a great opportunity tonight to have somebody like Chris, who has such experience at the quarterback position, both playing and coaching, to break down Tua's film at the high school level and then show you what it looks like very recently at his pro day so that he can kind of highlight some of the differences. But for everybody that's viewing in, before we hit play on the film, make sure that you're commenting in the post right here. Let us know where you're from. Be sure to let us know what FBU camp that you've attended in the past. Feel free to ask Chris some questions. I know we already got a few that have popped through, but don't be shy on there. And if you haven't already, check out our website at footballuniversity.org and create a profile if you haven't already. But Chris, let's dive into this film and break them down.
Okay, let me preempt it before. Joe, if you could freeze that there for a sec. So, hey, those of you that are watching this film out there, I just kind of want you to focus to his footwork. He's running a run and shoot offense here, so he's half rolling, which we just ran in Houston with the Houston Roughnecks. But most of his drops are a half roll to the left or a half roll to the right. But watch his footwork, watch his base, watch his poise in the pocket, his effortless quick release, and then I'll kind of commentate as we go through on the film. Thank you, Joe. So I think Tua played at St. Louis High School in Hawaii, Alohaville. Good athlete, long strider. I'm a little bit worried about his health and some of the injuries he's had with ankles and his hip injury. But I wonder if we can put this on a big screen or a larger screen here. One thing, Joe, can you rewind that at all? Is that easy for you to rewind? This clip reminds me when he came in and beat Clemson in the national championship game. Watch him as he drops. He looks to his right, and he's got a cover 4 look and freezes that safety and hits the go route over the top. So this is a young guy in high school that had great eye manipulation. He was able to kind of look off defenders and get them out of the path or where he wanted to throw. So I know he was coached at a really good level. This is a run and shoot play to his right. What I like is he gets backside, sets his feet quickly, and gets it out. He has a release that reminds me of Dan Marino in his career. And Dan Marino and Joe Namath probably had the 2 quickest releases ever, maybe along with Troy Aikman. But Tua has a phenomenal release. He gets it out in an A-B release. He locks the ball, locked, and then loaded, and it's out quickly. He's got great pocket poise. Here he moves around a little bit, buys a little more time. And he's got great downfield accuracy. I think that's one thing he and Joe Burrow really have that are their strengths. Nice little high angle back corner throw, so he can make those touch throws as well. Has the ability to drive. Now this is versus blitz 0. Okay, so there's only 5 blockers. He had an empty formation. Joe, if you could take that back for the football folks to see from the beginning, if possible. We're working with some interesting technology here, but again, there's only 5 to block. They're rushing 6, so he knows this is blitz 0. The defense is actually successful and gets to him, but because he's such a good athlete, he takes it to the house. Kind of almost looks like a quarterback draw. So that's that dual threat type quarterback that colleges are looking for. You just saw him hit a quick little slant in the red zone down there. He's got really good vision. You could tell he sees coverage as well. So I would encourage, here's some escapability to his left, and he puts it in a small mailbox window low and away where only his guy can get it. Here's another empty set. They just kind of outnumber the defense, and he's got a guy running scot-free. But here's another empty look. They're playing a cover 4 behind it. Little quarterback draw option, which totally defeats a five-man box. Here's another empty set, quick release up that seam. That's just X-Go, 81 X-Go that we ran in Houston. Here he is sliding around, buying more time. He kind of looks like Muhammad Ali, like a prize fighter back there. Almost looks like Patrick Mahomes buying more time. You'll see a couple amazing scrambles coming up here soon that he's like Fran Tarkington back in the day. But he's just a better athlete than a lot of these guys. That's why he played at Alabama. A little half roll, nice high and away throw on kind of a triple seam concept. Good feet, though. He's got a good base and good balance. There again, he's just taking off and beating linebackers and getting to that front pylon. I think we have a big scramble coming up here shortly. Throwing across his body there. We don't like you to do that, but if you make sure you read out in front of your receiver and there aren't defenders there, that's the type of deal we say, no, yes, good throw as a coach. Here's another scramble. Pretty good jets. He's going to have to be careful in the National Football League, making sure he gets down and slides to live another play. His body type, I think he's 6'1" and 7/8 or 6'1" and a third or something like that. I don't know what he weighs. Here's his scramble. So this reminds me of Fran Tarkington for those of us older folks with the Minnesota Vikings, but he's just playing some Patrick Mahomes street ball there, moving around and finding guys. Another empty formation here. Good drop, that quick release, man. He gets that ball out quick. It's an A-B release. A, he loads it. B, that ball's coming out. So I would really encourage guys to go out and work on a quick release drill. Here's a nice layer concept where he rolls out. He's patient, and he hits number 2 on that corner route. We call that a wise sail concept, or kind of like a scissors concept. Good touch on the throw. Here's an avoid, quick escapability and avoid, throwing on the run to a guy running a wheel route kind of in a small window. These are things as quarterbacks, all you guys out there, rather than just going out and throwing stationary, when you're out there playing catch with 1 or 2 of your buddies, practicing social distancing right now that we're all living. But you can do, I call these real ball throws. These are throws that come up in the game that a lot of times you don't practice on your own. So get out there, do your straight drop back stuff, but also practice scrambling around, making plays on the run, Patrick Mahomes type throws, Tua type throws. And these will prepare you guys for your middle school games, your JV freshman games, JV games, and high school games. Here's another empty set here. Perfect first step. Joe, can we go back one more time, maybe on the beginning of that rep? So I talked about earlier, every great rep starts with a perfect step. Watch Tua's first step on this drop. It's straight back. That's NFL good. Now he hitches up in the pocket. He takes off and runs. What I like about Tua also, a lot of times when he scrambles, he's not scrambling to run. He's scrambling like right here to find more time. And his eyes are still down the field. And then if nothing's there, then he takes off and runs. Okay, here's another empty set formation. Generally in empty formations, you got to get the ball out quick. Here he is scrambling again. Just a better athlete than the guys he's playing with is why he ended up at Alabama and will be a top 10 draft pick. Okay, nice little high school stadium to play out there at Hawaii University, Aloha Stadium there. That's pretty cool. Rolling left, a nice little go route, fade route, threw a lot of those to Michael Haynes back in the day. What I like there, Joe, if you want to show that one more time, then we can maybe cut this and talk about it and then get to his NFL tape. But what I like about this go route is he sees his receiver beat him, and that ball's out quickly. So he's throwing this ball quick while that corner is playing blind. And he beats the free safety. The free safety can't get over there. So that technique is perfect.
That was a heck of a breakdown right there. I mean, that's a lot that we threw at our viewers right there. I know it was quick and fast, like a no huddle offense. Chris was running through those highlights, but
you go back. You want to go back again?
Market him as a high school prospect. What are in summary, what are the best things that you think that you saw him do, and maybe as you were looking as a college coach, what were the things from high school that he needs to work on that we can kind of relay to our viewers?
Well, I think one thing you can tell that he was coached very well in high school and probably maybe prior to that, maybe in middle school. So, he's got a really good fundamental skill set. His footwork's really good. You can tell he works on a nice base where your feet are shoulder width apart, a la Andrew Luck, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees are always talking about working and keeping a good base. He's got a great quick release. Like I said, one of the quicker releases that you'll ever see. And, guys like I coached Matt Leinart with the Arizona Cardinals. His release was a little bit longer. I call him a long stroker. And the ball, and he didn't have a big time arm, but he had a tremendous college career, obviously. Tim Tebow, as we know, he had a much longer throwing motion, and he didn't last in the NFL, although he won a couple national championships and a Heisman. Blake Bortles for the Jacksonville Jaguars was a guy, when he threw the football, dropped that football down by his waist. Then he would lock and load it up by the ear in the money position. Then it would come out. I call that an ABC release. You're actually adding a step to that. So I think one thing you can do, go watch some Drew Brees film, go watch some Tua film, go watch some Joe Namath film or some Dan Marino or Troy Aikman film. You can probably watch it on YouTube and see how quickly they get that ball out. And probably 80% of the high school game is played from the line of scrimmage, only about 10 yards down the field, maybe 10, 12 yards down the field. So you have a lot of bubble screens, a lot of screen game, a lot of jailbreak screens, a lot of quick game. So if you can live and get that front foot on the ground quickly and get that ball out, number one, it's going to eliminate you getting hit. Number two, it's going to get in your athlete's hands quicker where they can get you free catches after the catch. But I think the main thing I saw that would be appealing to college coaches. I'm sure Tua's football IQ is very high. So that's something guys can do now is study some football, go listen to some guys, go watch Peyton Manning on Peyton's Place or Peyton shows he's doing, I think on ESPN or NFL Network are awesome. He talks about some great football. Or go listen to John Elway or Joe Montana or Drew Brees or Tom Brady, some of those guys. So work on your football IQ, watch film, study your opponents while you have some of this free time. His footwork was terrific. Talking about Tua, mechanics, I can tell he was coached very well, and that's why he got recruited by University of Alabama.
I think, well, first and foremost, I'll watch Peyton's Places with you anytime.
Those shows are awesome. Right?
I like it. Find somebody else who enjoys it. There we go. So as we kind of move forward onto Tua's pro day workout, I think we kind of want to hone in on what are some of the things that maybe you saw as a bad habit or something that he needed to work on that he improved that you can see now at his pro day. And then as well, what are some of the challenges he's going to have moving ahead to the pro game?
Okay, freeze it, Joe. Freeze it for a sec, just to, if you could, just start from the beginning again. But one thing we got to understand here too, when we're watching Tua, most high school quarterbacks play from all shotgun. So, and my good friend Marcus Mariota, who also went to St. Louis High School, he had to learn how to play from under center after he left Oregon when he was preparing for the NFL draft. So Tua, I believe, is having to do a lot of the same here. And a lot of, Joe Burrow maybe having to do the same as well. So first of all, I would encourage young guys to also practice from working under center. The second thing, he's working with my buddy Trent Dilfer here, who runs the Elite 11 stuff and does a great job in quarterback training and knows football very well. So I think the main thing we're going to look at, Tua is coming off that injury, so he hasn't put in a whole lot of work prior to this workout. But in terms of his mechanics, they're pretty darn good. Watch the release, how quick it is. One thing I really want you to focus on is his footwork on his first drop. He steps in the bucket quite a bit and wraps his left foot well behind his right foot. So I know that's an area that I would work on to get him. Yeah, that's not bad right there, but we'll see it from the other angle. One thing you'll notice with Tua in this workout, they're working on some quick avoid, which is real ball stuff. You're taking a drop, you're getting rushed, and you have to avoid little 5 to 6 yard quick out right there. Little play action boot. So you're trying to, Trent's having him do all the array of different things you do in the National Football League. Now I'm going from the crosser to the tight end on a cross, going from the slam flat. Quick drop, quick avoid to his left, reset the feet. Tight ends run a little pivot route. Quick feet. You see the good base. Joe, if you could go back to that one, if you don't mind. One thing the NFL players look for, and I always look for, is that really solid freeze it. Oh, man, that last frame you had was money. I know it's difficult, but what you look for is a quarterback when they take their drop to have a nice base. Their feet are about shoulder width apart, maybe a little bit wider. You don't want guys to get too wide. And I call it, we want to be able to throw out of a phone booth. See how he's finishing on balance right there. When he plants, he's got some flex in his right plant leg so he can drive through the football. But that's a really athletic position. Yes, great feet right there. Good quick release. Good drop right here. Ball's in that money position right over his left pec, which I call it in the money position. Nobody's holding the ball up by their right ear anymore. And I see several guys who kind of carry the ball down by their belly. So he has it in a perfect position. He's not rhythm padding the ball when he throws. So he's a lot like Drew Brees. So there's no wasted motion. Joe, go back to that out route he just threw, if you could, a couple reps ago. He threw an NFL chain mover, 3rd and 9, 4th and 9. He's throwing an out route right here. A good first step. Here's a little avoid on the shallow cross. Now here comes an out route, 5 quick, no hitch. Boom. Ball out. Ball's outside, right in the receiver's eyes. So I love his accuracy. I love his ball position, ball placement. Go back to that one, Joe, if you could. This really features the drop. So on his first step, you see him almost step over here by this yellow cone. So that would be an area I would work with Tua. I'd put a step over pad or bag behind him, and I just have him reach for more depth and step away from the center a little bit more. Maybe nitpicking a little bit, but this guy's pretty darn polished. So that's one little area that I think he could shine up and get a little bit better at. Matt Ryan had a challenge of it. Alex Smith did early in his career. His feet weren't very well, but then he got with a quarterback coach that really helped him. You see that hitch route or stop route, that ball high and away. Here's a little bit of a zone read with a back out of the backfield on the seam. Curl route, you see the ball real accurate right in the chest. That's kind of a deep crossing route, 18 to 22 there. Zone read fake with a little slant behind it, so an RPO. Go back one more time, Joe, on this one if you can. It reiterates a little bit. Watch Tua's first step. He's wrapping his left foot right behind himself. Boom. So, great freezer. Oh, that was perfect. So if he's throwing to his right and he's wrapping that foot so far behind him, he's going to have to make some compensations with his body to get that ball out to his right. So that'd be something I can work on. But now watch this throw. He puts this stop route high and away on the outside where only his guy can get it. So the accuracy is very, very good. Let's focus on his quick release a little bit. He gets that ball out, boom, quick movement, and that ball is out. He's cycling it quickly, A-B release. Nice little skinny post. One more time on that one if you could. I think you see this skinny post he's throwing with a 3 quick drop with no hitch. Right after this one, here's a little go route. Trent Dilfer gets fired up on that one. Here's a quick avoid. You can see he keeps 2 hands on that ball. So fundamentally, he is very sound. So if I'm a head coach or an offensive coordinator in the National Football League, I know I don't have to retrain this. He's not sloppy. He's been coached well. Here's a little avoid to his right, getting the ball ready early and throwing kind of an escape go or post route. So he is a very polished quarterback. I think the biggest question mark is his health and durability. How is that hip? That was a major, major injury. But I think from a football acumen standpoint, from being able to handle an NFL inventory offense, I think he's obviously got those things. He's got a great release, good feet. So that's why he projects to probably be in the top 5.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you can tell right there on the film, both from high school, obviously with his production at Alabama, and then what we just saw right there in the pro day, that Tua is a fantastic looking prospect. He's extremely sound from a technique standpoint. His development has been fantastic. We were thrilled to help with that development at an early age when Tua was at an FBU regional camp. It's, a part of what got him started a little bit. So it just goes to show when you're learning the correct ways to play the position and the proper techniques at a young age, those things can transfer as you move forward. One thing you said, Chris, kind of near the end, and real quick, I want to thank everybody who helped us collect some of that footage to provide our viewers tonight. Big shout out to Exos Digital, Jeff Martin and his team, Dwight Thomas, Anthony Williams. Truly appreciate that. They're fantastic, some of the best guys in the business. So appreciate their support tonight. But one thing that you said, Chris, that I found interesting was, people are worried about Tua's hip, right? And I'm kind of taking it back a little bit, where when you were a high school senior going into college, there were concerns about your knee, I believe, and
Yeah.
your history. So what if there's a student athlete now, a high school junior, senior, who has had an injury or is going through an injury currently, what would you tell him about the recruiting process? Some advice to that student athlete who's dealing with that.
That's a great question. I think the main thing is when high school athletes suffer an injury is make sure you get with a good physical training facility or somebody so you can really go through and do a thorough rehab, especially if it's an ACL. Sometimes once kids have those surgeries, and even adults do this, but kids, it's vastly more important. I think you make sure you get with a good rehab facility and you follow their if you're working with them at their facility, they're obviously going to take you through a protocol, a return to play protocol, and strengthening your ACL and those things. If they give you exercises to take home and do on your own time, sometimes we lose the discipline to do those things. But I think it's critical, number one, that when they ask you to do things at home, make sure you do them. It is really, really important, especially ACLs, or if it's maybe a labrum or a rotator cuff or a broken collarbone or something in your throwing arm. I think for Tua, obviously, he's going to have the best doctors and physical therapists working with him to get that hip right. But maybe some high school athletes don't have access to that or limited access. So I think the main thing is take it serious, put in the rehab, put in the time, make sure, and also make sure you're healthy and make sure you're right before you go back to play or before you go training, because sometimes kids are so eager to get back so early, they deem themselves 100% healthy and they're really not. So you don't want to go try to show your talent, skills, and abilities when you're not ready. So make sure you're ready to return to play and take that rehab serious. And then also, I think the main thing is, this is a whole different offseason this offseason. Like some of these quarterbacks I'm training, I've was a senior at Westland High School in Portland, Oregon area that I coach and I'm training. He doesn't have the ability to maybe go to some of these FBU camps right now since we had to cancel those. The college showcase camps may not happen. The one-day college camps may not happen, or a lot of them will be canceled. College coaches aren't going to be able to get out and see as many guys this year. So what I'm doing with him, and I would encourage seniors to do this, is I videotaped him last Thursday throwing. His brother videotaped it. We taped a bunch of different type of throws. I got him in front of the camera, and I asked him, I said, hey, what separates you from other prospective college quarterbacks, and what makes you special? Why should I invest a scholarship in you? And then I'm also going to give him my breakdown and my recommendations. So if you can get maybe your quarterback trainer or a high school coach to video you some and kind of make other more current tape rather than maybe your junior year huddle film, that would be something I'd highly recommend.
That's a really unique piece of advice for student athletes out there. If you're going through an injury and maybe you miss a season, I think Chris just gave you a roadmap in terms of an additional way to create some film or some content and an opportunity for yourself that you can deliver to college coaches. And even now, with everything that's going on, you're right, Chris. There's a lot of camps across the country that are not available for student athletes this offseason, and we've covered that at length with both Eric and Rusty on previous week's episodes. Luckily, we've been fortunate enough to not have to cancel any of our camps yet. We've had to postpone a few, but no, I mean we're certainly working through it. But it's a great piece of advice for those student athletes in the offseason right now who don't have that camp or that college opportunity. So, talking about camps, as we're segueing into that, you've probably coached at a ton of them. I'm sure that the list is really long. What are some of the best off-season camps that you've had the opportunity to work at, and why is that?
Well, you see me with my good buddy Elijah Molden up there. Elijah's going to be a junior corner at University of Washington, and I coached him at Westland High School. Wonderful young man. He's going to be an NFL draft pick as well. And that was the Seattle camp. So I think the Seattle camp for me, I always enjoy. It's close. There's mine. That's Alex Molden on the left in the red visor, who played 8 years in the National Football League. He was an 11th pick in the first round by the New Orleans Saints. And then Aaron Skinner was my defensive coordinator. He's down coaching at Bishop Diego down in the, let me see, where is that? Down in California area somewhere. Dino Filia, who's closest to me. I got my old FBU hat on there, but Dino Filia played 5 years in the National Football League, and he's got the paper sticking out of his waist, and played 1 year in the XFL League, the inaugural XFL League, I think in 2001 or 2 when it was. So they were all on my high school staff. And so I just love the FBU camps. They're a great weekend of football. You get to meet a bunch of new quarterbacks or athletes, all the guys. We train them. They're like sponges. They love it. But we coaches have a good time too. The coaching fraternity is very unique, and Football University has done a great job of putting some great coaches together. And we really, it's like old school week. We like getting back together with those guys. So I always enjoyed going to Atlanta. Eric Richards, who you brought up earlier, runs a tremendous Atlanta camp. He kind of keeps local guys out there doing that camp. So I don't do that trip anymore. But Atlanta's always fun. I enjoy going to Texas for those camps, down in California. And the one up in Seattle is always awesome.
So we got no Indianapolis, where I'm at and where I'm from.
Yeah. Several times. I love the Indy camp. Yeah.
But, hey, we got a great question with your experience at the college level as well. We got a great question from Avery Harris. She asked, how soon as a student athlete should they start reaching out to colleges? So, what advice would you give to Avery and her son?
Well, I think the main thing is, parents have to be honest with themselves too, and the young student athletes. So you don't want to waste college coaches' time by sending out a bunch of film blindly if you're not ready. If you're not a varsity starter, never send them JV film. If you're sending them JV film, I'd throw that right in the garbage. So I'm just being flat honest. But you need to be a varsity starter, a guy who's accomplished some great things. Now, that being said, there are a lot of different levels. There's junior college football, there's Division III, Division II, NAIA, FBS, and FCS. So there's a lot of different opportunities. But I think the main thing is you don't want to just send tape blindly off to colleges, to the coaches, because it's going to go to their secretaries. If they don't know who you are, they're going to throw it on a table. So you don't want to send DVDs blindly. I think if you're a guy who has started and garnered all league honors in your conference or maybe all state honors, the best way to reach college coaches is on Twitter. So if you can friend some college coaches of colleges that you're interested in, I think you have your dream colleges, maybe Alabama, University of Oregon, Georgia, University of Indiana, wherever. And then you have to have maybe some realistic ones that are FBS level. If you're interested in the academic experience, it may be Ivies or D3s. And then, like I said, there's D2 and junior colleges and NAIA. So I think the best exposure are doing camps like the FBU camps, showcase camps that are run by college coaches, the one-day college camps where you're getting in front of that quarterback coach, that offense coordinator, or head coach that can offer you a scholarship. Maybe you're younger and you go to those camps and then you get on their radar. So now they are aware of you. Your name's Matt Smith, and you go to a camp as an incoming freshman, but you're throwing bullets all over the yard and you have a nice body frame. I promise you they're going to put you on their radar and their list, and they're going to keep an eye on you. So those are good exposures. They're pretty inexpensive. And but I would say the best way, if you've got huddle film, you're an all-state guy or a first all-league quarterback or something, friend some of these college coaches on Twitter. They're sitting around right now looking for things to do as well, and they're watching a lot of film. So if they friend you back, then they may watch your tape and you may create a relationship there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Avery, hopefully Chris answered your question. I think he answered it and more. If our viewers are really dialed in right there, Chris really kind of harped on what Rusty mentioned a little bit last week when 24/7 Sports was here, talking about the different levels of camps that you should target when you're going out to potentially select as a place you'd like to attend and attend their college days and their college camps. And Chris, we appreciate your ability to kind of break down those specific college camps and other showcases that student athletes should attend. One other thing, back to Tua a little bit, we got a question earlier, I believe from Daniel O'Neill, and Daniel asked if Tua wouldn't have gotten hurt, do you think he would have went number one? So maybe compare him and Burrow, and some of the other quarterbacks in the draft.
Yeah, I think Tua would have gone number one hands down. I quantitate Tua kind of like a Joe Montana or a Steve Young, a Drew Brees, that style of game. I think he's a student of the game. I think I don't want to say he's going to outstudy you, but he's obviously very cerebral, has high football IQ. What I really like about Tua is he's extremely poised. He doesn't get flustered in the pocket. He doesn't panic. He moves around nicely in there and finds extra time or passing lanes, much like Dan Marino used to do or Tom Brady does now. He's got a great quick release. He's extremely accurate. I think he loves his craft, so you're going to get a guy who's a great worker. I think his nationality, I think he's very humble. He's a very poised young man. I think he'd be a great face of a program and a great leader for an NFL club. I think you can't go wrong with Joe Burrow either. I think Tua probably has maybe a little bit broader sample size maybe than Joe Burrow, but I think Joe has those measurables. He's a pretty good size, although he has a size 9 hand. So yeah. He was getting scrutinized on that, but obviously he's able to throw the football and do it in inclement well.
He can spin it just a little bit. He can spin it just a little bit. He can spin it just a little bit.
Man, he can throw it. And I remember his game too. He's extremely poised, man. When the lights were on, they're the biggest and the brightest. He shined. And another thing I think needs to be added too, he had tremendous talent around him. I mean, the 3 wide receivers and that tight end. I could still go out there and make some of those throws, although anything away from Joe, obviously. But he's got the measurables and the size. I love his arm strength. I love his calmness. I love his humbleness and the fact that he represents the place that he grew up in. He comes from a solid family and background. That's really, and I think a lot of these kids, the Jordan Love kid, I know Justin Herbert is a tremendous young man. So I think these kids are coming out so much more ready-made and so much more mature and polished. But yeah, I think Tua probably would have gone 1, and maybe Burrow would go 2 or top 3. Somebody would move up for him, and you may have 3 guys go in the top 6 tomorrow night. So I can't wait to watch it play out.
So, and Daniel, hopefully that answered your question right there. I don't think you can go wrong at number 1 tomorrow night. But there was one final question that I want to get your opinion on here, Chris, before we part ways. But nowadays, and you mentioned this earlier, the quarterbacks are playing in a system at the high school level, sometimes, right away at the youth level. We've seen it as low as 8U, 9U, 10U, and especially in college. Now, it is all out of the gun. It's a lot of the spread formation. It's a lot of quicks. We do not get a great deal of under center, but that's still very, prevalent in the pro game. Mm-hmm. What would you tell a student athlete who maybe has not come from a system that requires, that under center exchange? What can he do to simulate that, by himself? What are some ways to get comfortable with the QB center exchange? Haven't had the opportunity to get those reps.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one thing that FBU does great from ages, 6th grade on up to 11th, seniors to be, is all our camps are off a quarterback tray. So we're working from under center, so to speak. We're coming away from center, working on a 3-step drop, 5-step drop. So that's really beneficial. I know my guys I train, we get some, not an equal amount from under center, but maybe a 25% from under and about 75 from the gun. And really all I do is I put my hand on top of their top hand, and they simulate the way you hold hands when you get a snap, thumbs together, push up with my left hand when I get the snap and get that ball in that pocket. So I will snap the ball to them and simulate like my hand is the center's butt, and I'll snap the ball to them so they get used to that pocket and getting that nice crisp snap and receiving the laces from under center. So I think they could do that with their dads in the backyard or their brothers or their buddies and work on that and practice a little bit. I would say even if you're in a spread offense system in middle school or high school and it's all shotgun, I'd on your own just work from under center a little bit. Mm-hmm. Great cut-ups off tape, watching the NFL guys do it, or probably off some of our FBU archived camps that we do where we pull away from the quarterback tee from the line of scrimmage. So I just say practice it. Keep that quality and that skill set sharp and fine-tuned, because if you get to be like Marcus Mariota or Patrick Herbert, or Justin Herbert, Patrick is his brother, Justin Herbert, or Tua Tagovailoa, however you say his name, I butcher it every time. You won't have to relearn playing the game from under center. If you get to that level, you will have kept that skill nice and sharp.
That's fantastic. And so, for all you student athletes out there that are playing in a gun style system, take some of the tips that Chris just passed out there to you, and take them with you and continue to work on them. But certainly, Chris, we appreciate the time tonight. I want to give you the opportunity, here before we go, if you could leave our viewers with one thing, maybe specifically to our quarterbacks, just one thing to tell our viewers before we go here.
I think the main thing, I coached Kurt Warner in the 12th year of his career with the Arizona Cardinals, Hall of Famer, played with Jerry Rice in the Pro Bowl. The great ones, they work the hardest. There's a reason why they become the best players in the world, or the best players in middle school, or the best players in high school. If you want to be great, put in the time, work the hardest, and you'll never have any regrets.
And that's it comes back to something you said earlier. The harder it's an easy thing to say, right? That hard work will lead to great results, but it's much harder to do. Chris, we appreciate your time tonight. I really enjoyed the opportunity to break down some film of an FBU alum, and hopefully Tua will be able to achieve his dream tomorrow night. For everybody out there, for all of our viewers, make sure that you visit us at footballuniversity.org. If you haven't created a profile yet, please do so. So that we can kind of get you on the same journey as these young men who are entering the final chapter of their journey, starting tomorrow night with the NFL draft. But the FBU Huddle Rewind will be available on our YouTube page, as well as our FBU app, which you can download for Apple and Android on any specific app store. But we appreciate your time tonight. We look forward to seeing you guys next week. If you need anything, please let us know. Thanks again. Have a great evening.